I spoke to David Dollar. He's a senior research fellow with the Foreign Policy and Global Economy and Development programs at the Brookings Institution. He's also a leading expert on China's economy. He spoke about some of the challenges that lie ahead.
Yeah, you're right that the Premier's work report had a lot of ambitious targets and plans, but they're interrelated, so it makes sense to be pursuing all these things. I would highlight three things. First, he recognizes the economy is slowing down, so they've set the growth target at 6.5% to 7%. And within that, they're going to need a lot of reform to meet those numbers. He did talk about the zombie enterprises, the fact that you've got big state enterprises in steel and shipbuilding and coal that are really dead, and it's important to close them and help the workers. I think that's very important. Take care of the workers who are thrown out of work. So closing the zombie enterprises was number one. Number two, the Premier recognized that the service sectors are growing quite well and are a source of dynamism for China, but they're relatively closed. So he talked about opening up the service sectors more to private investment, including foreign investors. That could really help China restore its growth and maintain a healthy record. And then third, he had ambitious plans for moving ahead with hukou reform, recognizing that there are a lot of rural people who would like to move to cities, and there are a lot of empty apartments in cities. So why don't you link up the rural people who want to move with those empty apartments, and you can really meet two important objectives at the same time. So it's an interrelated set of reforms that make sense, and if they can move ahead on this, then they can meet those growth targets.
And David, I always like to pick your brain because you're a math guy, a numbers guy. So this target that he threw out there, 6.5 to 7, and also there's been a lot of talk about this deficit at 3%. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, in the global context, 3% deficit is very small. China has relatively little government debt relative to GDP, so they can easily afford it. I wish they'd be a little bit more ambitious. Tax cuts, they can help with consumption and making people's lives better, spending more money, first taking care of those workers who get displaced, but also beefing up health and education. So I wish they'd be a little bit more ambitious, but they certainly can afford the fiscal stimulus that they've planned.